Under the spotlight and familiar laughter, Conan O'Brien this time delivered more than just his usual humor. In a rare moment of caution, he addressed the speculation surrounding the secret involving Rob Reiner's son, a story that is intriguing to the public but also needs to be viewed with clarity, fairness, and proper judgment. What is truly being said, and where is the line between truth and speculation? If you want to continue following his insightful, objective analysis of Hollywood's behind-the-scenes world and famous personalities, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Conan O'Brien has admitted that he was venturing into very sensitive territory when discussing this story. According to him, what drew attention wasn't a single act, but rather the combination of circumstances, atmosphere, and the intensity of emotions that unfolded that night. It was this overlap that sparked the many questions and speculations that followed. According to several unofficial sources, Conan O'Brien was present at a gathering attended by Rob Reiner, his wife Michelle, and their son Nick. It was a private get-together held in a festive end-of-year atmosphere where everything initially resembled a typical Hollywood party. Warm lights, scattered laughter, and seemingly harmless conversations. However, just hours before a series of controversial events were reported in the media, that atmosphere began to change in unexpected ways. What initially appeared to be an intimate gathering gradually began to show cracks that were hard to conceal. The several guests recounted that simmering tension emerged, particularly around interactions within the Reiner family. According to accounts, Nick's son's behavior was said to have caused many to feel uneasy and worried, not because of a specific action, but because of his persistent emotional instability throughout the evening. The atmosphere grew heavy. Disjointed conversations gradually fell silent, and an awkward feeling spread throughout the room. There were moments described as shocking. Laughter ceased, silent exchanges of glances occurred, and some guests whispered to each other that the situation seemed to have escalated beyond a normal social gathering. According to witnesses, tension escalated to the point where some considered seeking outside help. However, that idea was quickly dismissed. Conan O'Brien, as the host, reportedly intervened decisively, stating that he did not want the situation to escalate or become a public spectacle. Those present said Nick Reiner appeared very tense throughout the evening. He was said to be constantly pacing, interrupting conversations, and exuding an unsettling energy that made many uncomfortable. Some guests even moved to other areas of the house to avoid unwanted interactions. The climax occurred when a major argument broke out between Nick and his parents, loud enough to plunge the entire room into a heavy silence. That moment made many realize this was no longer simply a private family gathering. According to those close to the family, there were small discussions among guests about whether professional help was needed. These exchanges were more concerned than judgmental, stemming from a feeling that things were spiraling out of control. But as soon as these conversations began to spread, Conan O'Brien reportedly spoke out to put an end to them in a clear and firm tone. He did not want any action that could escalate the situation, especially in the context of a celebratory and private gathering. According to sources, Conan's decision did not stem from downplaying concerns, but from a desire to prevent the situation from becoming a public drama that could have unpredictable consequences for all involved. After that night, many details were only recounted indirectly, filtered through the media and social networks, blurring the lines between truth, personal feelings, and speculation. And it is this ambiguity that has turned this story into a long-running controversial topic, forcing those involved to be cautious whenever they recall it. According to eyewitness accounts, Conan O'Brien reportedly made it clear that no one should call 911. He didn't want police cars at his doorstep, especially during a private and sensitive Christmas gathering. Those close to him later emphasized that this decision wasn't due to downplaying concerns, but rather a desire to prevent the situation from escalating into a noisy public spectacle that could quickly spiral out of control. One source described the atmosphere as tense, chaotic, and uncomfortable, but at the time, it wasn't perceived as a clear danger. At least that was the general feeling among those present. Only in later reflection did things take on a completely different meaning, and the decision not to seek emergency assistance began to be seriously questioned. See, authorities later confirmed that no 911 calls had been made from Conan O'Brien's home that night. Less than a day later, the shocking news broke. Witnesses at the party reported that Nick Reiner approached many people, asking questions that made them feel uncomfortable in the context. Questions like, "Are you famous?" were repeated to various guests. This occurred at a party where most attendees were familiar faces from the entertainment industry, people accustomed to public attention and unusual behavior. However, in the private setting of a gathering of colleagues, this approach caused considerable embarrassment and awkwardness. According to some accounts, Nick didn't just target a few people, but apparently approached several famous guests present. In subsequent interviews, the witnesses emphasized the strangeness of the situation. In the middle of a room filled with well-known figures, the constant questioning of their fame created an inexplicable sense of confrontation. Some argued that if it were a typical party, where only one celebrity was present among many strangers, such questions might be understandable. But in this context, it became unusual and unsettling for many attendees. The tragedy subsequently led to intense scrutiny of every detail of that night. Rob and Michelle Reiner were found dead in their Brentwood home, and authorities quickly confirmed it was a murder case that shocked the entertainment industry. Their eldest son, Nick Reiner, was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts. Prosecutors argued the tragedy occurred in the early hours of the following morning, just hours after the family left the party. Nick has not yet offered a formal defense, and the case is still under investigation. But questions surrounding the preceding events continue to haunt everyone who was present. Since the information was released, social media and entertainment news have exploded with debates, timeline analyses, and countless different theories. Many disturbing questions have been raised. Should anyone have intervened sooner, and could this tragedy have been prevented before things went too far? However, experts have warned the public against oversimplifying the issue. Mental health professionals emphasize that even with warning signs, accurately predicting a serious act of violence is extremely difficult, if not impossible. The former law enforcement officers also argue that calling the police doesn't always guarantee preventing tragedy in emotionally complex and unstable situations. This fact makes the story even more heartbreaking and difficult to accept because even with intervention at the time, the outcome might still have remained unchanged, especially if the core issues were not resolved. Those close to Conan O'Brien also quickly spoke out, asserting that he was not accused of any wrongdoing. According to them, the responsibility rests entirely with the individual who committed the horrific act, and any further speculation should be viewed cautiously while the matter is still being investigated. Those defending Conan O'Brien argue that the decision to prevent guests from calling the police was made under immense pressure and was purely a reflex. And they believe it was a hasty moment when no one could have imagined or predicted the horrific tragedy that would follow. One guest reportedly said, briefly but profoundly, "Only the perpetrator of the violence should be held accountable." However, this same person admitted that everyone present that night has been haunted by the memory, pondering the agonizing what-ifs. The question of whether things could have been handled differently continues to resonate within the entertainment industry, like a lingering echo. This haunting memory is made even more painful by reports that Rob Reiner had quietly confided to a few close friends at the party that he feared for his own son's life. These confessions, later recounted at a private memorial service, reportedly brought many to tears. The thought that Rob might have had a premonition of something ominous about to happen was chilling, especially if he truly felt trapped between a silent anxiety and an unnameable doubt. While some representatives attempted to downplay or partially deny these accounts, the emotional weight of the story only grew over time. The possibility that Rob lived in genuine fear before that fateful night further fueled public speculation. People replayed every detail, every glance, every conversation, trying to piece together the fragmented fragments to understand what truly transpired in those final hours. As authorities continued their investigation and legal proceedings unfolded, the tension not only failed to ease, but intensified. The moments at Conan O'Brien's party, once considered fleeting and unremarkable, now carry a completely different meaning. They serve as a haunting reminder that a seemingly harmless decision in a moment of chaos can take on a completely different form in retrospect after a tragedy. What was once seen as a host's attempt to defuse the situation is now scrutinized, as if it were the opening chapter to a far darker series of events. That choice is constantly dissected, every minute detail scrutinized. Heavy questions remain. Could anyone have intervened sooner, and were warning signs present but ignored? These questions offer no comfort, only expose a harsh truth. Even those on the brink of collapse sometimes fail to recognize the gravity of the situation until it is too late. It was a chilling lesson that continued to rock Hollywood weeks after the tragedy, as the shockwaves lingered. Rumors and gossip continued to spread, with close sources suggesting that tensions between Nick and his parents had been simmering for months before the fateful party. Those familiar with the Reiner family said there had been concerns about Nick's behavior beforehand, but no one could have imagined it would escalate to such a conclusion. At the time, those behaviors were seen as worrying, not as an impending disaster, and that's what makes the event even harder to accept in retrospect. Some friends said Rob tried everything in his power to help his son, quietly supporting and guiding him from behind the scenes. Outwardly, the family appeared stable, but according to sources behind closed doors, the situation was deteriorating. The contrast between his calm public image and his private anxieties is now the focus of attention. Meanwhile, those close to Conan O'Brien say he has been devastated by what happened and has remained largely silent in front of the media. Friends describe him as grieving and bewildered, trying to comprehend how a night that should have been for gathering, laughing, and celebrating could become the prelude to such a profound and irreversible tragedy. As the investigation continues, Hollywood is on tense anticipation of new information emerging. Allegedly leaked messages, previously unreleased videos, and conflicting accounts are circulating quietly among reporters. Everyone wants to know what really happened that night, who witnessed what, and what was said. However, many crucial details remain unconfirmed, making the overall picture increasingly complex. The story surrounding that evening seems to become more convoluted with each passing day. And every media outlet seeks exclusive information. Every insider claims to have inside information, and each new source makes the pieces even harder to piece together. There are even unverified reports suggesting a heated argument involving another celebrity guest occurred just before things spiraled out of control. However, to date, no names have been officially confirmed. According to several sources, investigators have contacted a few guests and asked them to provide photos, videos, or text messages from that night. A source reportedly close to the investigation revealed that detectives believe a crucial recording of a key moment may exist, one that could alter the entire sequence of events. If this evidence does exist, it could reveal the level of tension leading up to the Reiner family's departure from the party. Meanwhile, online forums have exploded with countless theories, ranging from socially oriented explanations to more extreme speculation. What began as a personal tragedy has now been shrouded in the fog of a Hollywood mystery, leaving the public both curious and anxious about what will happen next. Amidst the wave of speculation, conversations have also emerged about the pressure faced by the children of famous families. Some people share that speaking the truth is sometimes not as difficult as facing the judgmental gaze of the world, where every personal story is easily reduced to prejudice. Such exchanges remind us that fame not only brings privileges, but also carries invisible burdens that not everyone can bear. Amidst this chaos, some voices have tried to draw attention back to the human aspect of the story. Rob and Michelle Reiner's friends remember them as kind-hearted individuals with a subtle sense of humor and profound loyalty to those they loved. They were the kind of people who could fill a room with warmth simply by their presence. Therefore, the thought of their final hours ending in fear and grief is almost unacceptable to those closest to them. From a legal standpoint, Nick Reiner's legal team is reportedly preparing a defense strategy focusing on long-standing mental health issues. Some legal sources suggest the defense may argue the events were the result of a severe breakdown rather than deliberate action. Conversely, prosecutors are expected to strongly counter this, asserting they will present evidence demonstrating premeditation. As these two opposing viewpoints emerge, and the emotional weight of the case weighs heavily on the public. Silence has gripped the entertainment industry. Many big names have chosen to remain silent, seemingly at a loss for words in the face of a story that has overshadowed Hollywood's familiar glamour with pain and disbelief. Meanwhile, rumors of a potentially revealing interview are spreading. According to unconfirmed sources, a guest who witnessed tense moments at the party has agreed to appear on camera, and negotiations with a major streaming platform are reportedly underway. This is being called a sensational interview even before it's filmed. Those following the case believe that if the program airs, it could reveal previously unpublished details about what happened behind the closed doors of the mansion. Some critics question the ethics of doing so, while others argue that only transparency will allow the public to understand the full story. Whichever viewpoint prevails, attention is focused on the future, and any revelation could propel the story in a completely new direction. Meanwhile, Conan O'Brien remains silent. He is believed to have avoided public appearances, put on hold, and withdrawn from the spotlight. Friends described him as being in a state of despair, struggling with the heartbreak and remorse associated with a night that has now become an indelible memory. Those in Hollywood describe the atmosphere as stifling and unbearable. As the public continues to question who is protecting whom, what further truths will be revealed, and what is truly being concealed, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This story is far from over. The investigation continues. More witnesses are expected to come forward, and the media frenzy shows no sign of slowing down. Each new headline adds another shock, another rumor, and yet another dark piece to an already complex picture. Officials have so far remained tight-lipped about new evidence, but speculation that investigators are scrutinizing security footage around the property where the party took place continues to spread. The goal is reportedly to pinpoint the exact time the Reiner family left that night. If this timeline is confirmed, it could bolster some accounts or force a complete reevaluation of previous assumptions. Backstage, many guests were still reeling, replaying moments in their minds, trying to understand the meaning of seemingly insignificant words and actions at the time. Though some shared that what was said and how each person felt about it forced them to look at things more deeply, even better understanding the experiences and pressures others were carrying. For some, this process of confronting the situation lasted for months, full of stress and exhaustion, but also brought about a change in how they viewed relationships and personal responsibility. Meanwhile, there were reports that some guests proactively sought out private lawyers, fearing being drawn deeper into the vortex of an increasingly complex case. Hollywood has seen its fair share of scandals, But many believe that few stories combine the haunting interplay of fame, family, and tragedy as this one. Even seasoned industry figures were described as nearly speechless at the speed at which the plot unfolded and the feeling that so many secrets remained untouched. With so much still unclear, the inevitable questions continued to arise. What truths remain hidden, and who will be brave enough to speak out? As the initial shock subsided, Hollywood seemed to be standing on the ruins of a seemingly impossible story. A Christmas gathering intended to spread joy had become the starting point of a double tragedy, leaving a profound mark on the entire industry. This story is now seen as a stark warning of how quickly things can fall apart. Conan O'Brien continues to avoid public attention, believed to be quietly grappling with the consequences of that unforgettable night. Friends say he spent time reflecting, relying on close friends and distancing himself from the spotlight, while outside, every detail continued to be scrutinized relentlessly. It's becoming increasingly clear that this incident has changed how Hollywood sees itself. The sense of control, influence, and security once believed in has been shaken, revealing the fragility of real-life crises colliding with fame. Many private gatherings have reportedly been canceled. Stars are reconsidering security, personal boundaries, and who they allow into their inner circle. Behind the scenes, studios and industry leaders are reportedly apprehensive, fearing that past relationships or decisions could be dragged back into the spotlight. This fear isn't loud, but it's palpable and widespread. What was once seen as an isolated tragedy is now viewed as a turning point, forcing the entire industry to confront uncomfortable truths about silence, pressure, and avoidance. As more details emerge, attention shifts to what will unfold in the courtroom and behind the closed doors of the legal process. Sources indicate prosecutors are gathering timelines, digital data, and witness testimony to complete the case, meticulously analyzing every message, every action, and every minute of that fateful night. Meanwhile, pressure on witnesses is reportedly mounting. Some are described as struggling between remaining silent to protect themselves or speaking out to find peace. This internal struggle brings sleepless nights, anxiety, and the fear that their words could change the entire story. Undeniably, the case has entered a new phase. The initial shock may have subsided, but its far-reaching consequences are only just beginning to emerge. As legal boundaries were established and testimonies began to enter the trial process, Hollywood held its breath. Everyone understood that even a single new detail revealed could completely overturn the entire situation once again. Time passed, but the emotional repercussions from that night did not diminish. Friends of the guests reported that many had withdrawn from social life, refused to appear at events, and avoided cameras and the media. A simmering anxiety spread, prompting people to revisit old conversations, seemingly harmless messages, and previously overlooked moments. Even industry veterans began to share privately how this story had impacted them. What was revealed was not just a single incident, but touched upon a deeper issue within the culture of the entertainment industry. It's an environment where offensive behavior is sometimes rationalized, downplayed, or silently ignored to maintain a surface of calm. This unsettling awareness is forcing some influential figures to question themselves, even if they aren't ready to speak publicly. While public attention hasn't subsided, the silence from key figures is becoming increasingly heavy. Each refusal to comment, each information gap, further intensifies the tension. Hollywood is no longer just an audience to this story. They are living in a state of unease, anticipating the next cracks to appear. Now the focus is shifting to the long-term consequences, not only legal but also emotional and cultural. According to multiple sources, the incident is being quietly analyzed by crisis management teams, therapists, and industry advisors as a prime example of how personal disorder can quickly escalate into a public catastrophe. A growing awareness is emerging. Fame doesn't lessen the consequences, it often exacerbates them. Behind closed doors, many entertainment families are reportedly facing difficult conversations they've avoided for years, about boundaries, about interference, and about moments when silence does more harm than good. The most powerful impact is the feeling that this story will resonate for a long time, not as a fleeting topic of conversation, but as a wake-up call etched into Hollywood's collective memory. Though the cameras may roll, the impact of that night will continue to shape how people perceive power, responsibility, and warning signs. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings surrounding Nick Reiner remain unresolved, with unpredictable developments. Internal sources warn that further shocking details may come to light as the legal battle continues. The public continues to watch, awaiting answers, though the true ending remains a long way off. This story has lifted the fragile veil between fame and reality, exposing the pressures and hidden aspects behind the laughter, the lights, and the glamour. And even as the headlines fade, one thing is almost certain: the aftermath of that night will haunt Hollywood for years to come. Unanswered questions, moments of silence, and choices made will linger long after the spotlight fades. If you're following this story and want to stay updated on further developments, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Golden Top channel to avoid missing out on new information and deeper analysis. Your opinion matters, and this discussion is clearly far from over. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video until the end. Your support is the greatest motivation for the channel to continue bringing you more quality and insightful content every day. If you found the video helpful, don't forget to like it, leave a comment sharing your perspective, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest updates. See you in the next video.